We're gonna try to dive into with one of our expert guests. It's gonna be all about copyright and fair use laws for course creators. So I'm just gonna jump right into it because we have a ton of questions from our community. So I'm gonna bring our special guest onto the screen here. Hey, Autumn, how are you?
Hey, Rob, good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I think just like most of the people in our community to be talking about this, we haven't really even brought on a lawyer to talk about this topic before, so this is going to be a really good one. So if you guys are joining us live, give us a like, share this out, tag somebody that might benefit from this. We're going to be talking about general copyright and fair use laws for course creators, so that this is what this is going to be all about. But Autumn, why don't you say hello to everyone out there watching us live and on the replay, and tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, hi. Well, I'm so glad to connect with all of you today. I am a lawyer. I live in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and my small law firm works really only with online business owners and mostly course creators. So when I connected with Rob a couple months ago, I was really excited to help share some of the work that we do with copyright and trademarks and contracts and all kinds of legal things with course creators. So we got a ton of great questions in the Facebook group from you Thinkific guys before we went live. So I'm excited to jump in.
Awesome. Right. Yeah, no, we're gonna be jumping right in. I think that's probably the best thing to do. So before we do that though, tell us, how long have you been practicing, and some background about your business, just so people get an understanding of what you do.
Yeah, I'm coming up on 15 years as a practicing lawyer here in Tennessee. And for about the last 4 years, I've had an online focus. So I started my own law firm about 4 years ago. Before that, I worked for a small firm, and we represented mostly photographers. So we did just copyright infringement lawsuits, and we sued people who were using photographs without permission. So this is right in my wheelhouse. And now I'm not in the courtroom as much. Now I mostly am drafting contracts or helping my clients negotiate things, protect their brand, protect their content, send cease and desist letters. But we're mostly on the friendly, happy, proactive side now, which is a lot more fun.
Fantastic. Awesome. Okay, well, let's jump into it. So Autumn, I've got so many questions here from our community. I think we had almost 70 comments on the post that we had put up inviting questions. So I'm going to jump right into it. Okay, first question. What can I do legally if somebody downloads my videos or materials and distributes them without my permission, from your online course?
Yeah, so I'm going to jump in here before I forget and give my standard
Yes, do that first.
Which is that I am a lawyer. This is information. This is not legal advice. So if you guys have questions, especially, I know there may be people tuning in from all over the world. I'm licensed in the United States, so everything I'm going to be talking about today is based on US law. A lot of the concepts are going to be similar in other countries, but your mileage may vary. So definitely check with someone local if you have a specific question.
Perfect. Yeah. I want to second that. Again, this is all information. We're just trying to share information. Make sure you speak to a lawyer in your city and you consult with them, and don't just take what we talk about here today and start taking action based on that. So,
this is meant to get your wheels turning, kind of give you some vocabulary.
Absolutely. Thanks for reminding me. Okay.
No worries.
So on that note, you jump into that one.
Yeah, so this comes up a lot. So in the United States, if you create something like a course, like videos, if you're making worksheets, if you write an ebook, any kind of digital content that you're creating, just by creating it, by getting out of your head and into a computer file or a piece of paper, you now own the copyrights in all of that content. So it could be a blog post, it could be podcast, really anything that you're creating that's not just a compilation of facts is going to be copyrightable. So you now own that content, and the benefit of owning that content is you can now stop other people from using it. So if you find that someone, either a student or someone has hacked into your account, or all kinds of crazy things can happen. But if someone is using your content without permission and distributing them, you have the right to stop them. You can send them a cease and desist letter, but the trick is, in the United States, you have to register those copyrights with the Copyright Office before you can file a lawsuit. So that's why I really encourage my clients, if they have a course that is doing well, that they know they're going to stick with for a while, I really, really recommend that they register that course. You can kind of bundle up all of that content, all the files, and send it to the Copyright Office and register it in one bundle. And then you will be able to file a lawsuit. Now, as a practical matter, it's probably not worth spending the money and energy and time to actually file a lawsuit. But the benefit of that registration is that when you send that cease and desist letter, if you have that copyright registration number, the person on the other side knows that you're serious. They know that you could file a lawsuit if you needed to.
Okay.
That is a necessary first step. So all of you out there who are building your business on courses, I can't recommend highly enough to register your copyrights.
Register copyrights. Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And I typically say, reach out nicely. Maybe give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they didn't know that they weren't supposed to be. They probably knew, but I always like to start nicely. But before you do that, make a copy of whatever evidence you have. So if, somebody sent you a screenshot, or you found, a place where they were offering it, or you have an email, save that evidence, because once you contact them, it might disappear.
Right.
If it's online, they might change it, which is what you want them to do. But then if you have to come back later, it can be a bigger problem if you don't have that evidence.
Gotcha. Okay, so hopefully you guys are taking notes. So first is register the copyrights.
Yes.
Now, is that a problem if somebody, if you find that this person that's using this is maybe overseas or not in the US? Is there any should you even try, or what are your steps in that sense?
Yeah, so our intellectual property rights are going to be territorial. So they extend to the country where you've registered them. There is an international copyright treaty. So a lot of countries will honor each other's copyrights. That's certainly true for most of Europe. All of the major cities that probably most of your customers are in are going to be part of that treaty. And not all of those countries require registration, so it's a little different in some of those other countries. But at the end of the day, if you've got someone in Germany who's copying your stuff, you're probably going to have to file a lawsuit in Germany. So it does get very expensive and difficult. If you've got a multi-million-dollar course business, then that may be worth the investment. But probably for most smaller companies, it is just not going to be worth the energy and the money.
Gotcha. Okay.
You can still try and negotiate. You can send a letter. Some people will feel badly about it, as they should. For it's not the right thing to do. So you'd be surprised how much traction you can get just by sending a letter, either on your own or hiring a lawyer to send a letter. Just showing them that you know what they're up to sometimes will convince them to do the right thing.
We'll convince them to do the right thing. Okay, there you go. So hopefully that helps. Thank you for that question. Yeah. And if you guys have any follow-up questions,
drop them in the chat.
Drop them in the chat. Okay, next question. What are the most common law issues that online course creators need to watch out for? So I guess this is just more all-encompassing, just like general, what are the most common things that you're seeing out there that maybe somebody that is creating courses, something that they can watch out for and be on top of?
Yeah, so I see a lot of issues with people not having the right policies on their website. So like a privacy policy is going to be required by law, both in the EU and in the US. And so that's something to definitely watch out for. That just tells people how you're going to use any information that they share with you. So like if you're gathering an email address from someone on your email list, or your customers, you're getting their name, probably their mailing address, their credit card information. That is required by law. So I see a lot of people not realizing that is a requirement. You may see that on a website footer and not know that you actually need to do that. Definitely need to do that. And then another big one is not using copyright and trademark notices. So these are not required, but they're a great idea. It just lets people know that you're kind of planting your flag in the sand and telling people, this is my content. I own this. I have copyrights and trademarks in this content. So again, that's something you can just put in your website footer. It puts people on notice, and it stops someone later from trying to say, oh, I had no idea that you owned that stuff, or I had no idea that you, were telling me I couldn't use it. Mm-hmm. So those are two big ones. The third issue that I encourage people to watch out for is to have their own terms of use with their students. So that's like the contract with your students. You can tell them how to behave in your community. You can tell them, can they copy your materials and give them to a friend, or can they not? You can have payment terms. You can have refund terms. That's really where you flesh out how you're going to work with people in your course or in your community. And so that's really important, and not to borrow someone else's, but to make sure that yours actually says, the way that you are doing business is really important.
That's great. Yeah, those are great tips. We have, and this is not a plug for Thinkific, but there is inside Thinkific a place where you can put in your terms of conditions and things like that, and privacy policy. So if you guys have any questions where to find that, just let us know in the comments. We'll direct you to the right place. And it just makes it really easy.
Do you have like a kind of a standard terms of use that you provide? Or
we do have, we can send you sort of like a template, I suppose. I know you have some templates as well on your website. So I'll drop a link to your website. And again, a great resource, something that I guess is just like, make sure that people know so that they can say, oh, I didn't know that was your thing, so that's basically the biggest tip.
You want to show them as part of checkout that, they get the chance to read it.
This is their thing. Yeah, exactly. So great. That's a good answer to that. If you guys have any follow-ups, again, I'm going to put Autumn's website in the comments. Feel free to drop them in the comments or reach out to her directly as well if you want to go real deep, if you have a specific question that you want to ask her. Okay, the next question. And the next couple questions, I noticed there's quite a lot of questions about using other people's content inside of your course. Maybe as a point of reference. So sort of the next 2 or 3 are going to be sort of related, but like, how can we know the difference when producing our own courses and using other books as content as reference? I'm going to go into a couple more here. Using YouTube videos with or without permission, and then also one about articles, right? So I find an article that's related to my course, my course topic. Can I use that as a point of reference inside of my course? So feel free to answer that in general, and then maybe specific ones, as far as like, using other people's content inside your course.
Absolutely. So in US copyright law, we have this concept called fair use, which you've probably heard about. What a lot of people don't understand, though, is it is a defense. So you don't actually bring it up until you are sued. So it will not stop someone from suing you. You bring it up to the court, and then you have to prove all these things if you are sued. So here is the way that fair use works. You are allowed to use other people's works in certain ways, other people's copyrighted works. So, and this is actually written into the Copyright Act. So the typical examples of this are if you are using someone else's work so that you can criticize it. So like a book review is a great example of this, or like a music review. If you're reviewing an album or you're reviewing a book, you're allowed to use an excerpt so that you can basically tell the people who are reading your review what you're talking about. Commentary, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. These are all squarely in fair use. But fair use is a very gray area. So there's lots of other stuff that may or may not fall into fair use. So what happens when you are sued for copyright infringement? You've used someone else's stuff without getting their permission, and they're not happy about it. They file a lawsuit, and then you have to show how you're using it and whether it affected the market for the original work. So here are the things that the court will look at. They'll look at whether your use was commercial. So were you making money from it, or was it just, kind of art for art's sake or a nonprofit? They'll look at the type of work that you copied. So if you're copying something that's really creative, like a movie or a song, that's going to be more protected. You're not going to be as easily able to claim fair use as if you're just copying something like out of the dictionary, or something that's really factual or not very creative. The next thing they will look at is how much did you copy? So this is kind of proportional. If it's a 500-page book and you took 2 sentences, that may be different than if it's the entire work is a very short poem and you took 2 sentences. So it's not necessarily how much you took, but kind of how much in proportion to the whole. And then the last thing they'll look at is, as I mentioned, the effect on the market for the work. So a lot of these works, there is a market to license. So you could contact the owner of the work and say, hey, can I pay you a license fee and use your work in my course? If there is a market for you to actually pay for permission to use that work, they're going to take that into account. That by using it without permission, you're basically taking income from that rights holder. So this is very, very gray. So I typically encourage my clients to make their own stuff, use their own stuff if they can. And if they are relying on fair use, I want to sit down and talk with them about it and kind of run through all these factors and see how they're using it. If it's a 5-second clip from a movie inside a course, just to illustrate a point, that may be okay. It may not be okay. It's going to kind of depend on how you're using it. So there's never a black and white answer. If someone tells you, if you use less than 12 seconds, it's fine. That is not true. The answer is it always depends. You have to really look at, how you're using it in the context of all these other things.
This is great. Okay, so
let's get to this. Yeah, with that as the background, let's get to these specific questions.
Yeah. So let's go into the specific ones. I'll go run back up again.
Yeah.
So again, I think this one you answered here. But as far as like YouTube videos, right? So I understand this. I mean, sometimes there's some clips from a YouTube video, especially a lot of how-to videos on YouTube, where you might be like, okay, well, this is how you change a tire or something, and you take a little clip and then use that inside a lesson. A lot of people, like, there's been like all these different, different answers inside of our group. Like, hey, if you're charging for it, then you need to, you're liable. If you're not charging for it, you're not liable. But like, what's your thoughts on that as a listener?
So it's always going to be copyright infringement. Even if you're just using a little snippet, probably it's going, something like that, where you're using someone else's video to basically make a point in your own course. Because it's saving you the time and trouble and cost of making your own video showing somebody how to change a tire. The question you look at is, how much of your course is it? Is it only a tiny little sliver? Honestly, even if it is copyright infringement, from a lawyer's perspective, we look at this as a risk management issue. So even if it is technically violating the law, what are the chances that the person who created that YouTube video is ever going to find out? So, it may be technically wrong and you may decide to do it anyway because you're breaking the law, but you decide, it's probably low risk. I'm not necessarily recommending that. I'm just saying these are kind of the things that we look at when we evaluate something like that. Now, one thing I did see raised in the Facebook group, if you are just including a link to YouTube and they, click on the link and go out to go see it, that's always okay because you're just kind of directing someone to where the content lives. You're not actually copying it and putting it inside your own course. Gotcha. So that's an important distinction.
Fantastic. Okay, gotcha. So that makes a lot of sense. That really leads into the next question that we had. And actually, there's a couple questions in the group, and I'll get to that as well. So there was one question here, I think, which we answered, is that under what condition is it okay to show clips from movies or even screenshots of movies? Because I think the person that was asking this question in the group was teaching on movie history or something like that.
So that's a great example. If your course is on movie history, film history, or like how to use concepts found in films, that's closer to the education or that like criticism or commentary type use, which is typically fine. If your course is about how to change a tire and you find a funny clip in a movie and you're just using it basically to punctuate your content, that might not be okay. But again, we have kind of the letter of the law, and then we have to decide how we're actually going to behave within the law.
Gotcha. Yeah. Perfect. Okay, so hopefully that answers all of those questions. There's a question here from Art, who is wondering, and Art, maybe if you could expand on this, you're wondering about embedded links to YouTube. So I think that might be the same. I think if you're asking, can you embed videos from YouTube inside your Thinkific course? Let us know.
That's a tech question for you, Rob.
Yeah. I mean, you can easily do that. I think maybe you're wondering if you're allowed to do that. And I think, Autumn, you had answered that fairly well. And but yeah, Art, if I'm not reading your question properly, let me know. We also have a question here from I think from Jonathan. So he's just wondering as well. I don't know if this is a question for you, Autumn, but like if somebody takes your content online and then I guess edits it and defames it, is that something that people can go take action on then?
Yeah, you've got a couple options. One thing I didn't mention in that first segment where we were talking about if someone uses your stuff without permission, if someone copies part of your course and puts it up on another course platform, like let's say they download your videos and then upload them, we're talking verbatim copying. It is exactly your content. You may be able to contact that other course platform, whether it's Thinkific or someone else. You may be able to contact them directly and let them know that they are now hosting infringing content. And there are provisions in our copyright law. You may have heard of DMCA takedowns. It's the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. But typically those platforms do not want to be hosting copyright infringing material. And so they will typically take it down if they get a notice. And you do not have to have a copyright registration for that. You can also file a lawsuit for that if they don't take it down. So that is a way to also attack this problem where you do see somebody using your stuff without permission, or I'm not sure what he meant by defaming, like,
yeah, I'm not sure either. And I think, Jonathan, maybe that's a question. If you want, I've already linked Autumn's website down in the comments. So if you want to connect with her, I think this is probably more specific. So if you want to connect with her, with Autumn, and have a discussion around that, then by all means, I think that's probably the best way to get your answer. And also Giovanna in the Facebook Live, Giovanna Barino, who's actually here in Vancouver. She's wondering, can I schedule a meeting with Autumn to check specific issues? So
yeah, absolutely. Again,
so,
it's going to be based on U.S. copyright law.
Yeah, exactly. So that's something really important to note. So U.S. copyright law. I know, Autumn, you work with some international clients as well, but on U.S. copyright laws,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah. I have a client in Australia, one in New Zealand, but their customers are primarily in the U.S. So
perfect. Yeah. There you go.
Look at that.
There we go. There we go. So if there's any other questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. Also, if you're watching this on the replay, feel free to leave your questions in the comments as well, because Autumn is part of our community. This is a very hot topic, and I know that we're not always, not everyone is awake right now. So if you're in the UK or in Australia or Asia, you might be waking up and catching this on the replay. So feel free to leave your comments as well. We want to make sure that your questions are answered. Now, Autumn, where can people connect with you online or on your website, on social media? What's the best way?
Yeah, absolutely. My podcast is a great resource. If you enjoy these kinds of questions, I talk about all these kinds of things on the podcast. It's the Legal Roadmap Podcast. And then my website is just awbfirm.com. If you are wanting to learn more about legal protections for your course, the best place to start is the link that Rob, I think, has dropped in. It's awbfirm.com/course. And that will take you to a masterclass that I put together with the 3 main legal protections that your course is probably missing, but definitely needs. So that is the place that I would recommend you get started.
Awesome. Perfect. Awesome, Autumn. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm definitely going to put those links in the comments on the YouTube Live and also Facebook Live. Again, if you have any other comments, leave them in there, and any questions. But Autumn, thank you so much. It was really fun hanging out with you in San Diego a couple of weeks ago, and glad that we got to do this finally. You guys need to stay tuned, because Greg Smith, our CEO, who was a practicing lawyer, is going to be joining Autumn on her podcast, which I'll link in the comments as well. And it'll be a really interesting podcast interview. I'm really looking forward to that. So yeah, I'll link to that podcast after this. And again, Autumn, thank you so much. That was really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Rob.